Today, I'm going to give you our strategy for making the first $500 in sales with our new brand, Cowpow, without ads and funnels in the conventional and traditional sense. And it's relevant because we have brands right now that we are working with inside of our program that are past their first $500 in sales. They're actually doing thousands of dollars a day in sales and hundreds of thousands a month. However, the principles of what we'll be covering today will be used to build plans for them. So you can come along for the ride. And for this brand in particular that we are developing, Cowpow, the plan is for this strategy to take us to first $500 in sales, to then $500 a day in sales, to then $5,000 a day in sales, using the thinking that we're going to be talking about today. And the thread that's going to run through everything we talk about today stands upon this statement right here, which is don't make ads and funnels. Instead, the focus for us is going to be to instead make impressions. And I'm going to get quite detailed and nuanced about the semantics of what I mean by each of these words, because the words are what shape the way we think about our strategy. Without words and vocabulary, there is no thinking. When we think about ads and funnels, traditionally, what do we think about when we are referring to these terms? And more importantly, what does it do to us when it comes to the tactics that we implement? As an example, if you were to hire an intern and you were to tell them, I need your help with making some ads for our business, what are they likely going to make for us? They're probably going to make something kind of like what we're seeing here. And what's common about what is here is a focus on convincing, persuading, and influencing people into buying right now. So let's look at some examples. We got last chance, 60% off, sale, 50% off, tacos, $5 on Tuesdays, car repair services. The conventional understanding and tactics around making ads is typically quite focused around the product. And so it's very much centered around, we have this widget and how do we get the word out about it to people so that they can buy from us? Now let's contrast that to the other side of things, which is to make an impression instead. And by impression, I don't mean the metric inside of your ads manager when it comes to the impression count, but rather impression in the literal sense of the word. If we ask ChatGPT for some definitions of impression, we have a first reaction or a feeling, and then we have a mark or stamp. So a literal physical mark left by pressure from one object onto another surface. And then the third one is mental image or memory, a lasting effect or image that stays in your mind after an experience. These three definitions are more of what I'm referring to when it comes to making an impression on our consumers. So some examples. We have one from the Bible app over here, and it says 0 stars, would not recommend, Satan. Someone seeing this on the subway will have a reaction to this, in particular, humor. With this one over here from Lamborghini, we got picks up 5 times more women than a Lamborghini. And this is from VW. Again, they're using humor in this case to leave an impression on you to be interested in the car. And it's not VW, it's Daihatsu. This one over here, we have knife before Nutella and knife after Nutella. This one here, we have cola, where it's dark, coffee, where it's brown, and then Colgate, where it's a smile that's white. And big brands get a lot of flack for not being direct response enough. And that's something that I used to believe a decade ago when I got started in marketing that I no longer believe. From what I've observed, big brands can often be really good at making an impression on you that improves brand recall and conversion over time. We have another one here from a funeral home that says, text and drive. We have another one from Nutella that says, this is bread, this is breakfast. Very appealing for parents, just like myself. And this one is done by the person who collected all of these ads, which is the ad professor. And then we have one from KFC that says, guys, we're flattered after showing how lots of these other potential brands have borrowed from them. And so the thread that runs through the concept of making an impression over making ads and funnels is that the focus is on the person instead of the product. An analogy that I like to give is that, let's say you are currently single and you are looking to find the one that you want to spend the rest of your life with. How you do that and you get to know each other over time is you go on dates. And when you go on dates, there are two things that you can potentially focus on. The first thing could be you and everything you're planning to say, where you try to memorize lines and memorize stories and perfect what you want to show off about yourself. And the focus is all on features about you. On the other side of things that you could focus on, the other option is that you can focus on the other person, where you come in and your intention is to make an impression on them so they want to see you again. And you do it from a place of understanding, listening, and making them feel special and understood. When we look at this with the lens of simplicity, which one do you think will yield the better outcome? Which one do you think will make the other person actually feel like you left a good impression on them? Going back to actual tactics, the issue that I have in my approach to ads and funnels is that I'm putting the marketing technology and I'm putting the medium before the person. Whereas if you tell me and I'm on your team, you say, hey, we need to make an impression on our consumers so they impress, so they remember us and then convert over time. My approach completely changes, because in order for me to leave an impression on our consumer, I need to know who they are and what could potentially leave a mark on them. The second big reason I want to focus on making an impression over making ads and funnels is because user journeys are typically nonlinear, whereas the traditional funnel and the traditional approach to ads assumes a very linear path. And that path looks kind of like this, where we have an ad and then we send them to a product page or a landing page. And then we send them to a cart page or a cart slider. And then they go to the checkout page and then they convert. And then maybe we have some post-purchase upsells. So we assume that most people go through this journey with us. And when we first start off in marketing, we think that all of this happens within the same session that they engage with us and our ads. But the reality of it is things are much nonlinear. And we can see that both when we investigate user journeys, when people convert on our websites, but also if we just think about conversion rates, a pretty strong conversion rate on your website is anywhere from 3% to 7%. Some brands are able to get 7% conversion rates from cold Facebook ads, although not common, but to be generous, we'll say up to that, which means that on any given day, 93 to 97 to 99% of your traffic is not buying today. And the statistic that marketers have quoted for a very long time is that it takes 7 to 12 impressions, or maybe even more now, before a purchasing decision is made. And when I say impressions here, I'm saying impressions as a metric, but I also mean that each of these impressions that are delivered to them, whether it's on an ad platform or on a social media post or through an SMS or an email, you showing up in their world is a chance to make an impression in the literal sense of the word. And so because the behavior is so nonlinear, right? People may see one ad and then they may see ad number 2, and then they may see ad number 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, and then finally go to your product page and then maybe browse around and then come back and see a few more ads after that. And then finally end up back on your product page and then on your cart. And then maybe they're going to leave the cart and abandon it, but then they see a cart recovery or a checkout recovery email from you and then decide to buy. Because it's so nonlinear, it actually might make more sense to build up what we call an impression library instead of ads and funnels, where we create the assets that are required and supportive of making an impression on your consumer at each of these moments where the metric of an impression is delivered. And why this is relevant now more than ever is because Meta's systems like Andromeda have been made to actually support in that non-linear journey that consumers go through, including you and I, where Andromeda is what they call the personal concierge that's able to deliver the right creative at the right time to the right person. Instead of having one funnel where you have to make or break your business with one ad or one style of ad that goes to one product page that everybody goes through, you can instead build up a library of lots of different and diverse assets that can appeal to your consumer at different parts of the journey with you, so that along the impressions, or rather impression journey that they go on with you, you can actually make an impression. Like going back to the dating analogy, to where each time you go on another date with someone or a subsequent date, you can make newer and different impressions on them so they can see what it's like to actually spend time with you over the long haul. And how we do that tactically is really simple. What we do is take reviews, and from your reviews, you create personas, because your reviews can be seen as a fractal representation of your total addressable market. In our case with CowPow, which is a raw milk protein powder, ChatGPT has been able to come up with a few personas to consider. There's Carnivore Caleb, there's CrossFit Cassie, and there's Raw Dairy Riley. And the description for each of them is for Carnivore Caleb, keto carnivore entrepreneur who treats raw dairy as a legal cheat code superfood. For CrossFit Cassie's a CrossFit level 2 coach who slings clean protein shakes around the box. And then Raw Dairy Riley is a homeschooling holistic mom hunting shelf-stable raw dairy for her kids. And then you can spend time with these personas, really understanding them, so you can build up the assets that you can create that will naturally lead to you making an impression on them in a way that's well received. So here's an example prompt. My marketing philosophy is not rooted in persuasion, but in perspective, shifting perspective of consumers. When you shift perspective, you make them conclude on their own they want to transact with you. What are perspectives I would want to communicate to each of these personas, assuming my main channel for ads is Facebook ads, and I want to build a library of content that allows them to be served different pieces at the right time on their journey. Give me 10 each. And it outputs some stuff that I can consider using as fodder to build up the persona and the details of what makes up this persona of Carnivore Caleb, CrossFit Cassie, and Raw Dairy Riley, as well as triggers for what I would want to include in the assets that I create in order to make an impression on them over time. Here's another example prompt. Let's do this again, this time with beliefs they want to resonate with in a confirmation bias way, so that we can mirror to them things that meet at the intersection of what we believe are true and what they believe are true, so they can make their own conclusion that we are a good choice for them. And the great thing about utilizing AI to understand your personas is that it doesn't have to be a one and done project. It can be something that's iterative, that you build upon over time as you test things, gather data, interact with the real versions of these personas, and your prompting and your refining of the understanding of your personas will improve in a nice feedback loop. Now let's round this off with reason number 3 for why we want to throw out our old thinking about funnels and ads and instead focus our bandwidth on making an impression on our consumers. Reason number 3 is related to the concept of TAM, which is your total addressable market. Let me explain what I mean by that with an example. So I asked ChatGPT to give us an approximate TAM estimate for the 3 personas that we've been talking about. And this is what it came up with. So the TAM for Carnivore Caleb was $1.3 billion. The TAM for CrossFit Cassie, $216 million. And then for Raw Dairy Riley, it was $72 million. And right now, we don't need to obsess about the accuracy of these numbers, but instead the concept is that in the past, we would have had to focus on just 1 or 2 of these personas. With the 1 or 2 personas, it might take us a year or 2 years or 3 years to crack through and find a single linear funnel that would be profitable enough for us to scale because of the limitation around muscle. By muscle, I just mean the ability for us to produce the ideas and assets required to turn consumers into conversions. And this looks like copywriters. It looks like designers for images and video. It looks like consultants for ideas and angles. And what's now available, thanks to AI, is that we can tap into more of the addressable market that we previously couldn't because of the limitation of resources. Nowadays, you can get the output that you would have required from, as an example, copywriters. It wouldn't be unusual to bring a copywriter on to help you with building out a new funnel in the traditional sense. And it would take them maybe 6 weeks to turn around the first draft on a new funnel for you that you would then take another 3 or 4 weeks to refine and bring to completion to the point at which you're satisfied with it. On top of the time limitation, there's also a budget limitation around how many copywriters at once you can hire. Because copywriters, at least the good ones at the time, even 4 years ago, would be in the range of, I'd say, $4,000 to $10,000 per project. And on top of that, might charge performance fees. But now, because of tooling, we are actually able to address, in a very real sense of the word, the total addressable market that your product and your offer is potentially a fit for. As an example, previously, if the output that you were producing when it comes to marketing assets was only sufficient to, let's say, capture of this 216 TAM, $216 million in TAM, it was previously only 3 million that you were capturing. You may now be able to capture 9 or 12 thanks to tooling. And if we pair that with the philosophy of throwing out the traditional and conventional definitions of ads and funnels and instead replace it with the intention of making impressions over time, we get a beautiful system that'll allow us to turn our focus on the person into profit.